Hello there. I brought Lassie out today to a little village called Ochiltree, which is only a few miles away from the village that I live in. And today we're going to do a test between the iPad and the iPhone as the controller. A lot of people have been worried that the iPad is somehow maybe deflecting the signal a little bit. So I thought I would let Lassie go up with her new coat on and send her up over the same path and fly her out just until I get a drop in signal, then turn her around, bring her back, change the iPad to the iPhone and send her along the exact same path and see where we get a signal break as well. Now I wouldn't be narrating this video as I usually do. What I'll do is I'll just send up the two flights, and then when I sit down to do the editing, I'll do a voiceover there so we can have a closer look at when the signal drops and if it drops at the same place using both the iPhone and the iPad as controller. So here's Lassie's new skin. She's actually got her navigational beacons on as well here, the red one for the port side and the green one for the starboard side, and she feels $1 million. So let's let her have a wee fly about with her new coat on. Look at her sitting her stuff. She looks so cool. So anyway, on with today's video, and let's see if the iPads and the iPhone are any different at sending the signal out. So this is the village of Ochiltree. Lassie's about to fly over, and it's one of the oldest villages in Ayrshire, and it can be traced back to as far back as the Bronze Age. So it's not a huge village, so there's not a lot of interference, but there should be enough to show a signal drop at some point on this flight. If you look down there, that's one of the oldest cemeteries in the whole of Ayrshire, and maybe one of the oldest in Scotland. Here are some of the headstones that I found while having a look through. Many are so old that you can't even make out what dates are on them, but there are a couple that you can see just how old they are. And this is probably one of the oldest I've found, right here in the back corner. So as we fly on, this is the iPad. We're flying here, and we've got a full signal strength, and it's going along quite happily until we get to about 464 feet, which is coming up just now. And you'll see the very first signal drop just there. And this is at 461 feet. And there's the first point that it drops down to 3 and goes into the orange, and that's at 581 feet. So Lassie decides to push on a little bit further because 3 bars is still plenty, and we want to fly on until we get to 2, and that's at the point where we're going to turn around and Lassie's going to come back home. This isn't a test about range, this is only a test to see the difference between the iPad and the iPhone, and is there any difference in the signal strength between the two devices. So Lassie flies on here, and this is the wee village of Ochiltree. That's the main street that the cars are. That's the A70 that you see the cars on there. And as we come up now, just passing 1,000 feet, then she's about to get her next little set of drops in signal strength. And there we go, down to 3 and then down to 2. So there we go, around about 1,178 feet she gets her drop down to 2. And at this point, this is where I think, well, okay, that's really what we wanted to see. How far will it go before it drops down? So interesting to note, as you turn round, the signal goes from 2 bars, jumps up to 4, and then it actually increases up to 5 very soon here, which is quite interesting. And I think this is because the antennae on Lassie are in her front legs. So when she's flying towards us, there is a stronger, seems to be a stronger signal strength. And if there's anybody out there who's more technically minded or knows more about the details of this, I'm sure I'll be corrected in the comments. But it seems to me that flying back home, it's not necessarily about the distance, but the direction that she's facing now has seemed to have made the signal stronger. So if you look right in the distance there, you just above the crosshairs, you'll see the Barony A-frame up there. It's only, I think it's maybe 1.5 miles, 2 miles away from this little village of Ochiltree, and you can see the smoke coming up from the timber mill, which is just across the road from the A-frame. Anyway, so that's Lassie coming down to land now, having completed a test on the signal strength of the iPad. And that's an iPad 8 that I was using for this test. So we're going to switch over now to the iPhone. And this is an iPhone 12 Pro Max. Now, the flight's not going to be absolutely identical, obviously, because we don't have Litchi on the Mini 2 or any other app that I know of that we can set waypoints and allow it to travel exactly the same route. But I'm going to do my best to guide Lassie along as close a path and as similar a height as I did with the iPad. So there's the graveyard once again, gimbal pointed just slightly down. She's up a tiny wee bit higher this time, I think, but she did ascend to 200 feet. But as we're travelling along here, we have a full signal strength of 5, but there we go, there's our first drop to 4, and that's at around about 334 feet. So she dropped down. But once again, as she flies on, it doesn't really fluctuate much from that. But there we go, there's the first drop down to 3. As you can see, that's at 708 feet. But we're going to push Lassie on and get her to the point where it drops down to a signal to 2 bars, which is the point where we'll turn around, and we'll see just how similar that's going to be with the iPad. Now I start to turn around here because she has reached the same distance that she did before with the iPad, when the iPad dropped to 2 of a signal strength. And at this point she's at 3 with the iPhone, but as she turns around, the signal does drop to 2. So it's pretty much at the same point where we're getting a 2 and a 3 signal with the iPhone as we did with the iPad. This time, as she's turned around, the bars didn't go back up to 4 or 5 until a little bit later than they did with the iPad. And it is fluctuating between the 3 and 4. But I don't know if there's any significance in that, to be honest with you, because we're only talking about 20, 30, 50, 60 feet here. That's not really much of a difference, especially at the speed that Lassie's going, which is not fast, but enough certainly to cover 10 feet in a second or a second and a half. So there's the symmetry again down there. And she's back up at 5 bars now. Probably a combination of those front feet where the antenna are placed facing us, and the distance that she's away now. She's fairly pretty close. And she comes down to land now with a full 5 bars, as you would expect. And there she's landing safely.
Landing.
So not an absolutely scientific test, and not not one that you can make an absolute conclusion about. To do that, you'd have to run the same test over and over and over again and then analyse the results. You'd probably have to run the same test in various locations and analyse the result. But for me, based on this test and based on the amount of time I've had flying and attaching various iPads and various iPhones to the controller, I can't see a significant difference in the signal strength no matter which device you use. There's a lot of things to take into consideration. The way you're facing, the way the drone is facing in the air, the heights, the surroundings. But as far as the difference in signal strength between the devices that you use to attach to the controller, certainly between the iPhone 12 Pro Max and the iPad 8 or the iPad Pro, I can't find any difference. Your mileage may vary. Give us a thumbs up and I'll see you in the next one.